welcome to Bindi, Karia. Thrilled to have you with us today. And over to you to introduce your panel and the next part of the event. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. It's nice to see your face. Thank you for inviting me to chair this panel today. We're going to talk to 4 amazing leaders, entrepreneurs, chairs, NEDs, who have really seen their businesses work throughout this crisis. And I just wanted to start by saying it's been a long, crazy 6 months. And just reaching out, knowing that many of you might be at home with your families, you may be home alone, you may be with flatmates, you might be lucky enough to work in remote, exotic locations. And all of you are there doing the best you can with your businesses and juggling the families and the multiple balls that you're juggling right now. And we're approaching a second wave. So I think this is such a timely time to really talk about leading in a crisis. And so with that, I'd love to introduce the 4 great speakers. We have Darina Garland, the co-founder and chief experience officer of Ooni. We have Sharmadean Reid, the CEO of Beautystack. Susanne Given, who is an NED and chair of multiple digital companies and FTSE companies as well. And Maria Raga, the CEO of Depop. So I think what I'd like to do, ladies, is with each of you, just a really quick intro to who you are. And in about 2 minutes, how have the last 6 months been for your businesses? So Darina, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about Ooni and then what's happened in your business, very high level over the last 6 months.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the intro, Bindi. We have had a really extraordinary time at Ooni. Generally, things have been incredibly good, I have to say. We were able to pivot to moving fully online, so being able to work remotely is a blessing in this time. And because of our product being a product for the home, so we make pizza ovens that are about making great pizza at home, then they've been something that's been truly in demand around the world. So we have had a lot of challenges, but we've also had a lot of success and press and interest and orders coming in thick and fast. So we've grown, definitely accelerated, I would say at least a year or 2 years in terms of our already ambitious plans with orders. We had manufacturing issues in the beginning because we produced mostly in China, and of course there was a knock-on effect from that. And of course we've had challenges with team members being alone or being isolated and being concerned during the pandemic, which I think is a kind of global concern. So that's a massive part of my role, is to keep the team motivated and happy and consider well-being, and it has been harder during this time. We've, like Claire said, we've increased comms dramatically. We were already a very open team, but yes, in a nutshell, we have had a really, really strong year, and because we're in so many different business networks, we're nothing but grateful because of the position we're in and the fact that we're able to keep growing. One other thing is we've hired about 25 additional customer support team, which is pretty radical. We had 3 at the start of lockdown. So because of the incredible interest and the backlog and all of the inquiries, so the team continues to grow.
Thanks, Darina. And we'll get into much more detail around that in further questions, but thank you for that high-level summary. Maria, I'd love to hear 2 minutes on Depop and a little bit just high level about what's happened the last 6 months, because I will go into much more detail throughout the panel. Maria, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just saying, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be surrounded by these amazing women. But yeah, so first of all, I don't know if you know everybody knows what Depop is. Depop is a marketplace for pre-loved fashion. We have a community of more than 24 million users that are primarily young, very passionate about creativity and self-expression. And we basically exist to help them find their identity, learn the basics of business, and at the same time doing something good for the planet. Now, in terms of these, past few months for Depop, it has been similar to what has been described by Darina. The business has been doing extremely well in the past few months. Our community has been basically a lot more active, spending a lot more time in the app, listing more, selling more, and yeah, ultimately making the business doubled in this period. And so yeah, we're extremely proud of the fact that we've been able to help millions of very young independent sellers to stay in business despite these tough times. And we also observe that this pandemic has accelerated certain trends that I believe are here to stay, from the shift into digital to more social consumption. And yeah, so basically we believe that this will continue to be good for our community. But also, as it was mentioned by Darina, this basically meant that the team had to cope with a lot more volume of requests, of support. And so the team had to be very, very quick to adapt. So we had to also double the resources. And as if for many of us here, working from home, even though we are a tech business, has been challenging. So yeah, that's at a high level.
Great. Thank you, Maria. Sharmadean, over to you from Beautystack.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Sharmadean Reid, founder of Beautystack, which is a social network for booking beauty and wellness treatments. So over the last 6 months, unfortunately, the government mandated that we close operations, right? So beauty was unable to operate from March the 23rd onwards. It was opened up in waves, partially in July and then mainly in August. But for an early stage company like us, it was very, very difficult to essentially know what to do. So in terms of the business model. So what we did was work incredibly hard to support our users. And just like Maria, with Depop, we have, hundreds of young women who are running their businesses through our app, right? And suddenly unable to do so. So what we did, we kicked into gear with helping them create and manage virtual masterclasses, so virtual beauty tutorials, virtual workshops, everything from digital Reiki to how to do a smoky eye. And while our users were hesitant at first because they're not, digitally native people, they're not all tech literate. When they saw the money that was able to be made by expanding their audience, they got really excited. So for me, coming out of this last 6 months, I'm actually really, really excited about the opportunities and where the direction of the business is going.
Great, thanks. So I think, the first three, we've got two very large scale-ups with large communities. We've got one early stage startup, and every single one of you are seeing a positive future. Sharmadean, I note that you've done a bit of a pivot to manage while the ladies in your ecosystem can't work. But it's really fascinating to see, despite the size of the business, there's some very interesting commonalities here, particularly around digital. So with that, Susanne, I'd love to finish off with you because you wear multiple hats, whether as chair or whether as NED in, scale-ups and FTSE 100 businesses. So I'd just love to get your general perception of what you've seen, the good, the bad, just like how the last few months been for some of the businesses you've been engaging with. Susanne, you're on mute.
There we go. That's better. I think there have been quite consistent challenges, actually, whether it's an early stage business or it's a large FTSE 100. When this started back in March, nobody had any idea as to what was going to happen here, how severe it was going to be and how long we would be in lockdown. And so I think everybody immediately went to the balance sheet situation to make sure that there was flexibility and there was enough funding and debt provided around the businesses, frankly, whatever the size, to see them through what was at that point in time looking extremely concerning and quite frightening for everybody. So I think, first of all, it was a balance sheet conversation. Then immediately after that, it became a working from home and technology situation that everybody had to affect. And again, it didn't really matter what size of business you were in, you suddenly had to provide solutions to your teams and for your customers for you to operate effectively. Those businesses that are engaged with stock then had the big imponderable, which was how much stock are we going to need here? Are we going to need what we have? Are we not going to need it? And trying to understand what the medium term looked like. So that became the sort of fourth level, I guess. For some of the business I'm involved with, there are clients, it's third-party clients. So for instance, on the warehouse side of the real estate investment trust that I sit on, where we provide leading edge warehouse facilities for the like of Amazon and Ocado and so on. And on that side of things, and there will be lots of different aspects to this, it was an assessment of how were our clients going to navigate this very, very complex situation, and were we actually going to be in a good or not so good position once we got to the Q2 rent collection piece, and so on and so forth. So actually, I think whatever the size of business we were in, we were all dealing with ambiguity and uncertainty and trying to create as much flexibility and access to funding and support that we possibly could. In some of my businesses, we asked our staff in the early phase, when we didn't know what the outlook looked like, whether they would be prepared to support the company. And in some companies, the staff almost unilaterally said they would like to support the company. And we stepped down to 4-day weeks with immediate effect to make sure that the company-wide efforts to secure the balance sheet were also put in place. So it was an extraordinary time of collaboration between business owners, founders, staff, banks, investors, to make sure that the businesses were put into, if you like, a pause mode. And then I guess as we came out of that initial phase, and the tailwinds which came alongside all of the difficult circumstances that some businesses are dealing with started to propel certain businesses forward. And then you went into a completely different challenge, which was, how do you have enough stock? How do you have enough capacity? How do you have enough delivery capacity and commitment from your providers? So it became a very different set of challenges, and perhaps some high level problems of a different nature. And I think at this stage, where we're now phasing into the second wave of coronavirus, a lot of that experience from the last 6 months is clearly forming a good understanding of what we have to put in place to get through the next 6 months, hopefully.
Great. Thanks for that very thorough summary, Susanne. I think speaking with my venture partner at Draper Esprit Hat, certainly the first 2 months, the team were very much in constant communication with the portfolio companies, ensuring that the balance sheet did have 12, 18, 24 months of runway, and to make changes to the business to ensure that kind of cash was in reserve. Because again, Susanne, as you mentioned, the ambiguity and uncertainty, we just don't know how long this is going to last. So that leads me nicely into the next question. And I know some of you touched on this in your sort of intro, but actually it'd be really good to get to a more practical level. Could you ladies talk us through some of the key operational decisions you had to make through this crisis? So whether you had to cut costs, what you needed to do to get a runway of funding. I know some of you mentioned you were hiring more customer support staff, all of that stuff. It would be really interesting, I'm sure, to the ladies in the audience. What are some of the key practical operational decisions you made? And if we can go through that quickly, then I'd love to step into the company culture next. So Darina, I know you had some great comments on that when we were doing our briefing call. So let's start with you and Ooni and some of the operational decisions you had to make.
Yeah, as Susanne mentioned, it was a lot to do with stock and how much to order. You know, originally we thought this could be a little blip of positivity and like incredible sales, and then quickly realized that we had to keep replenishing and ordering big. And probably our biggest decision for us is about next year and what this means for us and the sort of tail of COVID. And we hope that beyond COVID, that our customer demographic will be interested in Ooni, and this is not just a blip in the ocean. We're very positive about kind of the basis and the foundation we've got now. I think that, yeah, as you mentioned, the key operational decisions were we've had an incredible, beautiful community since the outset. People love pizza and they love to geek out over it and support each other and share pictures and connect, and it's truly universally loved. I mean, what is not to like about pizza? So it used to be a joyous place on the internet, and actually with our pre-order status and people having to wait potentially up to 3 months for an Ooni, the rage started to come, and you know, it went from being like an absolute, I don't know, pot of gold, a corner of the internet that's joyful, to having quite a lot of grumbling and a lot of incoming. So having to hire, we've hired in batches continuously more to stay on top of tickets and to have response times come down. And we've actually made customer happiness our at the North Star metric, up there with revenue, which was a pivot from, you know, what we had previously. It's always been truly important to us. You know, it's the same before we jumped on the panel, that if you have a consumer brand, people love your product, they tell their friends, and that's how you scale. And that has been what's happening. But when people are grumpy and waiting for the products, we knew we had to be as brilliant as communication as was humanly possible. And so I've hired heavily in that realm. So yeah, a lot of the stuff now is about ongoing comms, about making sure that we have the absolute minimum response time possible, and to keep on delivering, and really, really consider a much bigger scaling opportunity for next year, because we want to be able to really fulfill the demand in Ooni. So we're hiring in all departments really to enable this scale to happen more quickly. And one of the most amazing hires we made was our recent CMO, who we brought on from a hero company. So I think the advice would be to always kind of pitch high and get your absolute dream team in place.
I have a sound issue.
Oops.
Yeah, oh there, sorry, my sound went off. Sorry about that. Maria, same question to you. I think, Darina, just to summarize, it was about manufacturing and supply. I like the fact that you really focused on customer happiness as a new North Star metric, and really setting yourself up for the future over the next year or two. And actually, in your original statement, you talked about the transition to online as well. And so that's actually really interesting. How about you, Maria? What kind of really big operational decisions did you have to make, and what can the ladies in the audience or the gents in the audience learn from some of the insights you built over this crisis?
Yeah, so similar to what has been mentioned, there were a couple of phases to this. So the first one, when we saw the business contracting a little bit at the beginning, when it was unclear what was going to happen, we decided to take a bit of, quite prudent view about the future. And so we decided to cut our marketing spend, we frozen our hiring, we even took a salary cut, the executive team, for a number of months. And this was actually quite a hard call, because at the time where we were setting this new prudent plan, the business started to grow. So it was hard for the team to understand why we were doing this. And the reason was because we were very uncertain about what was going to happen. But then when the business started to grow at a crazy rate, then we said, well, you know what? Now we can start to be a bit more relaxed about certain measures. We decided to reprioritize some of the product deliverables. So for instance, we had a partnership with My Hermits so that we could do home collection instead of having to go to the post office. And so we started to sort of like adapt to the new times, knowing that we didn't know how long this was gonna go for. We still don't know how long this is gonna go for, right? But yeah, it was more about adapting to the new reality, hiring more people, as I said earlier. And then lastly, like trying to be as close to a community as possible, because in the past we've been doing lots of events, and of course all of those things were not possible anymore, right? So we opened up a Slack channel to communicate with our top sellers. We did a lot more CRM to make sure that our community felt safe. And yeah, that was at a high level the operational changes that we've done.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And Sharmadean, you're much earlier stage. What are some of the kind of things you did? I know you were talking a bit about a pivot, but what are some of the other kind of operational decisions you had to really focus on in this period of time?
Yeah, so I think like Maria said, that the phases of it were the most difficult to catch up with, because by the time that you'd made a business decision, decided to implement it, everything was changing and the rules were changing, particularly for us with where we had to very, very closely follow government mandates for our industry. Initially, my focus, in fact, the whole way, my focus was about conserving cash. Knowing that we were pre-product market fit and pre-revenue, we have spent the last 18 months running lots of experiments, like whether it's digital experiments or event and acquisition experiments. And what we did initially was I just decided to cut anything that was, superfluous to the core of the business and focus on the only three things that mattered, which was getting our app launched, maintaining productivity with the team, and keeping a really, really close eye on our costs. We didn't do a hiring freeze per se, but I decided to focus on hiring incredibly experienced senior talent who have been through lots and lots of different economies in fashion and luxury. So we made an incredible hire from Burberry and from New Look, and having experienced leaders in the business who can act almost like a beacon for the younger members was really, really important to me. The other thing was maintaining the mental health of the team, and by doing that, maintaining productivity. We, in the very early, when it was deep in lockdown in April, May, when people started to really, really find things difficult, we initiated a mental health buddy scheme. So we paired an engineer with a marketing person, or just two people who would never work together, to check in regularly with their mental health buddy. And we also announced a duvet day, where you can completely last minute just say, I don't feel like working today. And hardly anyone actually used that, but the psychological safety of being able to be like, I don't feel great today, meant that everyone was really committed to the company and felt like they were at the right place. It's been interesting for me because as a founder, I really vibe off brainstorming and ideas and new projects, and not having that regular team around me to do that, I've had to adapt. I'd say that the team have actually probably adapted better than I have. What we've got right now is we come into the office on Mondays and Fridays only, which I think will change, which we use more as brainstorming ideas, and then everyone works from home Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I think that that's the thing that we're grappling with at the moment, is as the rules keep changing, should we be all working from home and just get used to that, or otherwise?
I think it's a very flexible working model, and certainly I've seen that with some of my clients and work that I'm doing. But we'll get into that in a bit. I actually want to pick Susanne's brain on this one as well. I guess you kind of did a beautiful summary at the beginning of tailwinds and strengthening the balance sheet. But I'd just love to get a few more sort of deeper ideas of some of the key operational decisions that the execs in your businesses had to face, and what a lot of folks in this audience would be facing themselves.
Yeah, I think if I focus on the early stage businesses, which is perhaps most relevant to the audience on this topic, reorganizing the business from an organizational design perspective, having customer services teams effectively disbanded to then move into their homes to operate from home, accepting that certain teams, micro teams as we call them, may fall over because of COVID, and how do you deal with that? Introducing technology support to support those teams and the business, importantly, like on Babbel, so that if your customer services team in Germany goes down because of the regulations there, you can switch that entire operation into the UK, and so on and so forth. Deciding that perhaps because of the challenges, you would no longer have country teams in every country, and reorganizing the business to become slightly more centralized than it might have been in the past, to create a different business model from a cost perspective. These are all very difficult positions, and actually it doesn't matter whether you've got headwinds or tailwinds, because things have changed so dramatically in terms of customers and fulfillment. I think businesses who are on the front foot, whether they have tailwinds or they have headwinds, will have gone through their organizational design and looked at it critically to understand, is it fit for the world we live in and we will live in for the next 18 months potentially. And so my businesses have had to do that with a clear eye on opportunity but also a radical view in terms of, well, actually, because of the way we're operating now, what do we no longer require in the business, and taking tough decisions based on that.
Yeah.
And I think some of those decisions are relatively straightforward to take, some of them are not. And, you know, making sure that you are keeping an eye on the short, immediate term, which is managing a crisis, but also being clear about, hang on a minute, in a year's time, things will look different again, and making sure that whatever changes you make are things you can reverse if you need to. And also not cutting out things which are seeding for the future success of the business too quickly. All of those things are decisions being made, I guess, within my early stage businesses.
Yeah.
Things like advertising campaigns, where you've got a business that is operating both above and below the line with big marketing budgets comparatively, you know, determining where those marketing dollars are going to go if you're going to cut back by, say, 25%. You know, they're tough decisions, and the executives work very closely together to come out in the right place on this, and also considering what's going on in the marketplace. But, you know, it's not easy, whether actually you have tailwinds or you are facing into headwinds. You know, these are tough decisions in a market where the rear view mirror has very little value right now.
Yeah.
And that you are having to interpret a landscape that is deeply opaque. It's been a tough 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, and that actually, Susanne, leads me nicely into the next question, because you've all had to make tough decisions for the good of the company. You all might have been scaling rapidly. You might have had to pivot. You might have had to cut your marketing budget by a significant amount, or completely, you know, kill the budget. What have you done around company culture and keeping the team morale up? And I like what Janet had to say, you know, when she was talking earlier, which is around collaboration, communication, and keeping your eyes on the customer. But what have you done? Can you give some practical hints and tips about what you've done around communication and team morale? So Maria, why don't we start with you, given the kind of community you work with, then Darina, and then we'll go to Sharmadean.
Yeah, so I must mention that for me personally, it was even harder because I was on maternity leave since February. So I was involved in the business earlier than I had anticipated, given the pandemic. But, you know, like in any crisis, when things like this happened, it's always an opportunity for the team to really get together and, you know, galvanize all the efforts, work more cross-functional. But in terms of what the team did to make sure that, you know, the culture and the vibe, the energy that for Depop is so important. Like if you were to come to the office, you will feel the vibe of our community just by coming into the office, right? So not being able to have that, it's obviously something that's, you know, it kills me in a way. Like Sharmadean was saying about creativity and how, you know, it's for our teams, it's so important to be close to each other. So the type of things that we've done, which I'm sure is very similar to what other people have done, is, yeah, to constantly communicate, being as transparent as you can, always in a timely manner, and give the team the opportunity to ask questions. So we open up a Ask Me Anything session on Tuesday where anybody can dial in and ask any question, whether it's about the business or about what's going to happen in the world. And so just giving the team the opportunity to open up and show that, you know, we are there to also take care of the well-being was extremely valuable.
Excellent. Darina.
Hi.
You hired 25 new people. That must be interesting to onboard them into company culture when they're all remote and working from home. How did you do that?
It's probably about maybe like 35, 25.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, 25 were just in our Ooni Experience customer support team. I've been super proud. I think it speaks a lot to how much work we've done on culture previously to like build up a really open, collaborative, warm team. Our values are incredibly important, and that's how we hire. So kindness, passion, rigor, innovation, and ambition. So the kindness and the passion ones have really come into their own during this time. And you can just see, even though it's hard, the new team members understanding that it's remote, and the existing team members really stepping up and onboarding people with with something really close to our old culture, and just like, and in fact it's developing every day. I think that morale wise, we have had some moments actually, because we've changed our targets and have grown so quickly. There was a bit of confusion about it, and I think learning to communicate differently. I don't know about any of you, but just like today, when you're speaking to so many people on Zoom without a response, like got 80 odd staff around the world, and there's very little feedback, it's much harder than when you're presenting in real life, and that's been a learning curve. And to try and make it as interactive as possible to encourage that real, you know, an actual conversation. We also, because of our kindness slant, we have done a lot of different initiatives to try and enable the team to volunteer or to help other people that are less fortunate. I think that's a really good thing to do, is to sort of remind yourself what we're grateful for and to help other people. And, you know, sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't, but I think having those kind of initiatives, which is called the slice of kindness, has been another nice focus. So we're not just like, oh, we're sad, we're alone. And yeah, we haven't been able to get back into the office. So lots of things, like I'm sure lots of people have done, with pub quizzes and Zoom, like Zoom rooms and chats, and we sent out a care package recently. So we're trying to just like remind our staff that we really hear them. But yeah, Ask Me Anything is also a good one. I think that that's been helpful. Yeah, just trying to keep it up and actually play the long game, because this doesn't seem to be wrapping up anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think we're in this for the long haul. Personally, this is the new way of working, and it is what it is. We had one question come in from the audience, and it was about sort of balancing the work personal life within lockdown. And actually, Maria, you referenced being on maternity leave. Shar, you've got a son. How have you managed to sort of balance your work personal life and manage your kids' schooling and all of that at home? I mean, all of you guys can answer that, I'm sure, but it just came in from the audience. I just wanted to slot that in before I went back to company culture. Maybe Maria, we start with you, and then Sharmadean, you can go from there.
Yeah, so I guess my plain answer would be that I am surviving. I don't think it's something that, you know, it's hard to manage. You know, it's very hard to, you know, I've got 3 kids and, you know, and work has been, like we discussed, really challenging. But I think it's important to, and it's something that I said to my team, is I think it's important to put perspective and know what's important, and know that these things are challenges that right now are difficult, but, you know, things will get better soon. And practical advice, I would say, if you are a mother like myself, it's about surrounding you with having help. You know, it's, you know, having a good nanny that can help you with the kids, and having a setup that at least allows you to, you know, keep on doing. But on the positive side, I might say that for my 3rd child, I spend more time with him than I spend with the other 2, because I've been at home and I've been able to enjoy him throughout the day. My husband has been also being able to participate. So not everything is negative, but like I said, it is definitely hard to juggle.
Yeah, and Sharmadean.
I would say that there were definitely tears as we got used to both, you know, working from home. I think being very practical about having designated work areas for your children and for yourself. You know, one of the first things I did in lockdown, which changed the game for me, was I went to the office and unscrewed a few desks and took them home and put one in my son's room for his schoolwork.
Yeah, right.
But I would agree with Maria that I think children really care about quantity of time, not quality of time. And just by virtue of being in the same room with my son, it's been incredible. I feel like we're so close, we're bonded. He's, you know, I'm learning about his personality, he's funny. And I'm very used, you know, as most working mothers are, very used to juggling and making things work. And I just think we did. The key thing for us is, no matter what, we took a 1-hour walk every single day without fail, rain or shine. And I think that totally is what kept us sane. No devices, just talking, walking. It was really good for mental health.
Yeah, I see a lot of vigorous nods, and I think we could probably go into so much more deeply, but we don't have much time left. So I want to shift to the last question, because I think given the summit and what it's around digital innovation being the superpower for small businesses. And I want to hear about some practical digital changes you've made, some real world examples that the people in the audience could really learn from. And Susanne, maybe I'll start with you. Some real world digital examples that you've seen, and then I'll do a run around each of you in the last 5 minutes.
I mentioned Unbabble earlier. It's a fantastic translation tool, and it's just incredibly good. We've used that in a couple of businesses, and it really is outstanding. Within Maid, we introduced a digital appointment solution system. It's something we build in-house, which means that if you want to go and have a look at a store, then you have to make an appointment. It's been incredibly successful again. I think that whole piece with knowing when you'll be seen and seeing somebody who's got time for you has delivered conversions which are off the charts. So that's been very, very helpful too. And then the third one I would highlight, particularly for those of you who, it could be because there is a desire to get people back to the workplace, but actually it could also be because you've got staff who are not particularly well set up at home. And to Sharmadean's point earlier, having that differentiated space between you and your family is not as easy for everybody. Not everybody has that space in those facilities. And so therefore, we've done surveys in a couple of my businesses and asked the staff, what do you want? And there are some members of staff who are actually quite desperate to get back to the office because their home working environment simply is quite challenging. And we've used an app that gives people both access to space in a controlled manner. It's called Office Space. It says on the tin what it is. But it's a really practical solution for managing people and space and making sure you never have too many people in the space. Every single location is numbered and captured, and you book a location effectively, and it's all set within rigid parameters, and it also has a track and trace function. And so therefore, if you end up with, sadly, somebody contracting COVID, you know exactly where they've been sitting and who they have been around. And that's given people confidence to come back in the office. And that's been really important for those who are keen to get back to a working environment.
Thanks, Susanne. All some great examples. Ladies, we only have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to have to run through each of you. Maria, can you give us some practical examples? There's so much we could talk about, but unfortunately, the time goes too quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's so many things I could talk to you about. Yeah, so I guess my practical examples, well, Depop is a digital product, so it's not about like specific digital innovations that we've done. For us, it's been more about continue to work very closely with our community, despite being working from home. And so we continue to co-create campaigns with our users, and they are basically the protagonists of many of the campaigns. And we continue to build moments that resonate with them from a cultural perspective, very linked to what Claire said about being close to your users and to your community. So for us, it's something that we have not stopped doing and we will never do.
Okay, thanks. Darina, you mentioned you did the biggest shift to online and you had a lot of focus on manufacturing. So what are some practical things that you have changed? Darina, you're on mute.
Classic. We've always been 50-50 online and B2C, but actually we pivoted way more to being online, and our retailers have as well because they're often closed. So that's been a really interesting shift, and we're looking at people who can really tell our story online and help build the whole category of backyard pizza ovens with us. So that's one big thing, and yeah, it's more of a slide into that rather than a brand new initiative. Another thing I mentioned when we chatted previously was just to sort of think of the world as being more accessible. So our retailers, originally our biggest retailer now in the US, saw us first in their car park, then in their foyer, then we were allowed in the office. Now they can't get enough of us, and we're on Zoom calls often. And there is that kind of like, it's more, people are more accessible. I sort of name drop some of the celebrities that we've just reached. Yeah. Well, Bruce Willis is probably one of my most favorite. My husband watches it's acknowledged we were doing all right when Bruce Willis was posting about his Ooni last week. And it's just like people are bored. Like, you know, people are at home or they have more time. And so I found that I would really encourage anyone, if you've got heroes that you love, just reach out to them, because people are available in the way that they weren't before. And I'm talking about literally everyone. Jake Gyllenhaal's got in touch with us. I'm like, this is my inbox now. So yeah, I would say that, like, rethink how accessible people are, clients, partners, and always be brave and just ask. And it usually works.
I love it, because to me, that's just basically saying, because we're all at home and digital, it's purely democratized how we get access to usually inaccessible people. I also remember, I wrote in my notes here, you were in conversation with the former US president and his wife as well, I gather.
It's still work in progress, but like, after we got like Drew Barrymore, I was like, okay, who can I think of that's better? And then everyone's like, literally, you're obsessed over Obama's. And so yeah, we're in conversations. Yeah, I'll keep you posted. I'll keep everyone posted.
And then Sharmadean, last 30 to 45 seconds with you. I know you've run some pretty incredible online campaigns to lobby on behalf of your community, and maybe talk a little bit about the power of digital and how you used it to try impact British policy, because I think that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, one of the things we did was run a crowdsourced campaign where beauty professionals recorded their PP in work environments, and we used an app called Seen It, which is a UGC and crowdsourced video editing platform, to then make this video, which we then posted to say, bring beauty back. But I do want to say that actually the biggest digital innovation for us is virtual treatments that are the most unexpected, as in virtual meditation, virtual facials, things that you would never ever imagine. Oh, I can call my practitioner and get a really, really similar effect. Like I did a facial acupressure session with Sarah Braddon online. That to me was like super surprising. That digital Reiki, tarot, and all of these things that you've assumed have to be done face to face, don't have to be. So yeah, book a virtual beauty treatment and support your local beauty professional.
Excellent. I will definitely do that. We all need a bit of pampering now and then. So ladies, I was such a quick time, but thank you so much for dialing in and sharing some of your insights.